Freedom starts with surrender. Sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? After all, isn't freedom about taking control, standing tall, and bending the world to your will? But what if I told you that the harder you fight for control, the more trapped you become? What if the very thing keeping you stuck, angry, restless, anxious, is your refusal to let go? We've been taught to chase freedom by conquering our emotions, our circumstances, even other people. But Spinoza, one of the boldest minds in philosophy, turned this idea on its head. He believed true freedom isn't found in control, but in understanding, not in fighting the current of life, but in flowing with it. Think about it. How often do you feel overwhelmed by emotions you can't explain? Frustrated by situations you can't control? Stuck in patterns you can't break? What if there's a way to escape all that, to find peace, clarity, and power, not by resisting, but by surrendering? In this video, we're diving deep into Spinoza's revolutionary philosophy, ideas that will challenge everything you think you know about freedom, emotions, and the universe itself. By the end, you'll see the world and yourself in a completely new light. Ready to unlock a freedom you've never imagined? Let's get started. Lesson 1. God and nature are one. Pantheism. What if I told you that everything you've ever been taught about God is too small? That the divine isn't watching from above, but pulsing through the veins of the universe itself? Imagine for a moment that God isn't some distant being, but the air you breathe, the stars you admire, the very thoughts racing through your mind. Spinoza boldly declared, God and nature are one. Let that sink in. One. Not separate, not above or beyond, but intertwined in every atom of existence. Could it be that the answers we seek aren't found in holy texts or celestial visions, but right here, in the way a river flows, the way a tree stretches toward the sun, or even in the silent hum of your heartbeat? But here's the catch. If God is everything, then what does that make you? Are you merely a speck in the vast cosmos, or are you part of something infinite? Spinoza believed that understanding this unity could unlock a kind of freedom most of us can't even fathom. And yet, isn't this idea unsettling? If God and nature are one, then isn't everything that happens, every joy, every tragedy, divinely necessary? Does that mean there's no higher force to plead with, no miracle waiting to intervene? Or does it mean something far more powerful? Think about it. If we are all part of this infinite system, then fighting against it, against the tides of life, isn't just futile. It's like trying to outsmart the very laws that govern existence. So, what's the alternative? Spinoza's answer: surrender. Not in weakness, but in understanding. But how do you surrender to something as vast as the universe itself? How do you embrace the idea that you and the stars, the storms, even your struggles, are all threads in the same divine tapestry? Hold that thought, because once you grasp this, the way you see yourself and your place in the world will never be the same. Stay with me, because this is just the beginning. Lesson 2. Freedom through understanding. What if freedom isn't about doing whatever you want? What if true freedom is something entirely different, something deeper, something harder to reach? Spinoza had a radical idea. You're not free until you understand. But understand what? Think about the last time you felt trapped, not by a locked door, but by your own emotions. Anger, fear, jealousy. They pull the strings and we dance. Have you ever asked yourself, why do I feel this way? Or, what's really controlling me? Spinoza would say that until you confront those questions, you're a prisoner, not of the world, but of your own ignorance. Here's the twist. Spinoza didn't think ignorance was just not knowing. It's deeper than that. It's when you live without questioning why things happen, why you react, why you want the things you want. He saw freedom as this: the ability to act, not out of impulse or fear, but out of clarity. Sounds simple, right? But here's the hard part. What happens when you realize most of your choices aren't truly your own? That your desires, your fears, even your dreams are shaped by forces you don't fully understand? It's a jarring thought, isn't it? And it raises the question, how much of me is actually me? Spinoza believed that the more you understand the causes behind your emotions and your actions, the freer you become. He called this freedom acting under reason. Imagine it, no longer a puppet to your moods, but the master of your own mind. But let's not sugarcoat it. This is no easy path. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about digging deep, asking hard questions, and confronting uncomfortable truths. Are you willing to do that? To hold a mirror to your own mind and ask, why do I feel this? Why do I want that? If you're still here, you're already closer to freedom than most. Because the first step is daring to question. And the next? Well, Spinoza has some thoughts on that too. Let's keep digging. Lesson 3. Emotions as natural phenomena. Have you ever felt like your emotions were completely out of control? Like anger or sadness wasn't just a feeling, but a storm that swept over you, leaving you helpless in its wake? Now imagine if, instead of resisting those emotions, you simply understood them, like studying the clouds to predict the storm. Spinoza believed that emotions weren't enemies to fight, but forces of nature to comprehend. But here's the twist. What if your emotions aren't you? What if they're just the result of unseen forces acting on you, like the wind shaping the waves? Spinoza argued that every emotion you feel has a cause, hidden, but discoverable. And until you uncover that cause, you'll always be a passenger in your own life, never the driver. Think about the last time you were angry. Did you stop and ask why? Was it really because of what someone said? Or was it something deeper? Fear, insecurity, or even misunderstanding? Spinoza would tell you this. Anger doesn't come from others. It comes from within. And here's where it gets even more interesting. He believed that by understanding the root of your emotions, you can transform them. Fear becomes caution. Sadness becomes reflection. Anger becomes strength. But let me ask you, how often do you take the time to decode your emotions instead of reacting to them? Spinoza's view is simple, yet revolutionary. Emotions are not good or bad. They just are. They're as natural as gravity, as predictable as the seasons. But here's the challenge. Are you ready to stop fighting them? To see them for what they truly are? Now, let's make this personal. What if the next time you felt overwhelmed, instead of resisting, you paused? What if you looked at your emotions like a scientist studies nature, searching for patterns, seeking to understand? Spinoza would say that in that moment, you're closer to freedom than you've ever been. But what happens when you start to see emotions as clues rather than chains? When you realize they don't control you, they guide you. Well, that's where the real transformation begins. Let's explore that next. Lesson 4. The illusion of free will. What if I told you that free will, the thing we hold so dearly, the idea that we're in control of our lives, is nothing but an illusion? That your every choice, every action, is not entirely yours? Spinoza dropped this bombshell centuries ago, and it's still shaking the foundations of how we see ourselves. Think about your last big decision. Maybe it felt like your choice, made with complete freedom. But was it really? Spinoza would ask, what led you to that decision? Was it your upbringing, your fears, your desires, or maybe forces you can't even see? He believed that every action, every thought, is shaped by causes outside your control. Sounds unsettling, doesn't it? If we're not truly free, then who or what is pulling the strings? Spinoza compared us to a stone rolling down a hill. The stone might feel like it's choosing its path, but it's just following the laws of nature. What if you're that stone? But here's the paradox. Recognizing this doesn't trap you, it frees you. How? By understanding the causes behind your actions, you gain clarity. Spinoza believed that knowledge isn't just power, it's liberation. When you know why you want what you want, or why you do what you do, you stop being a prisoner of blind impulses. Let me ask you this. How many of your daily actions are automatic? How much of your life is spent reacting instead of choosing? And what would happen if you stopped and questioned every motive, every desire? Spinoza's idea of freedom isn't about breaking the rules of nature. It's about understanding them so deeply that you can work with them, not against them. But here's the catch. If free will is an illusion, can we ever truly blame others or ourselves for anything? What happens to guilt, anger, or resentment when you realize that everyone, including you, is just following the paths laid out by forces they can't control? Hold on to that thought, because what Spinoza suggests next might just change the way you see the world and yourself forever. Lesson 5. Virtue as power. What is power? Is it wealth? Influence? The ability to control others? Spinoza had a very different idea. For him, true power wasn't about dominating the world. It was about mastering yourself. And virtue? That's not about morality or rules. It's about strength. Strength to act according to reason. But here's the big question. How often do we actually act out of reason? Think about the last time you made a decision. Was it rational, or was it driven by emotion? Spinoza believed that most of us live at the mercy of our impulses, chasing desires that often leave us weaker, not stronger. Why? Because we confuse what we want with what we need. Now imagine this. What if every decision you made was grounded in clarity, not confusion? What if instead of being a slave to fleeting emotions, you had the power to rise above them? For Spinoza, that's virtue, this ability to align your actions with a clear understanding of reality. But here's the twist. This kind of power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from controlling yourself. And yet, isn't that the hardest battle of all? To look at your anger, your fear, your desires, and say, "You don't own me. I own you." Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly in control of your actions? Not swayed by temptation, not reacting to someone else's behavior, but acting with pure intention? That's the kind of power Spinoza is talking about. A power that doesn't need recognition or rewards, because it's rooted in something unshakable, self-mastery. But here's the challenge. How do we cultivate this power in a world designed to distract us? How do we practice virtue when everything around us pulls us toward indulgence, envy, or fear? Think about it. If virtue is power, and power is freedom, then living virtuously isn't just a choice. It's a revolution, a rebellion against everything that tries to control you. Are you ready to claim that power? Because what lies beyond it is something few ever experience. Stay with me. There's more to uncover. Lesson 6. Self-knowledge is key. How well do you really know yourself? Not the version of you that the world sees, not the mask you wear at work or with friends. I mean the real you, your thoughts, your fears, your deepest desires. Have you ever stopped to ask, why am I the way I am? Spinoza believed that self-knowledge isn't just important, it's the foundation of freedom. Because if you don't know yourself, how can you ever hope to understand the world? And here's the kicker. Most of us live our entire lives as strangers to ourselves. Think about it. How often do we run on autopilot, reacting to the world without questioning why? Let me ask you, have you ever felt stuck, repeating the same mistakes over and over again? Spinoza would say that's because you don't truly know the forces driving you. Your emotions, your habits, your past experiences, they're pulling the strings. But what if you could break that cycle? Self-knowledge isn't just about introspection. It's about uncovering the hidden causes behind your actions. Why do you get angry at certain things? Why do you crave validation? Why do you fear failure? Spinoza didn't see these as flaws, but as clues. Clues that can lead you to a deeper understanding of who you are and, ultimately, how to change. But here's the tough part. Self-knowledge requires brutal honesty. It means looking in the mirror and facing parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. Are you ready for that? Are you willing to ask the hard questions? Because Spinoza believed that until you do, you'll never be truly free. Think about it. If you don't know yourself, who's really in charge of your life? Is it you? Or is it your emotions, your fears, your past? And if it's not you, then who are you really? Stay with me, because once you start peeling back the layers, you'll see that the journey to self-knowledge isn't just about understanding. It's about transformation. Let's keep going. There's more to uncover. Lesson 7. Eternal joy in intellectual love of God. What if joy wasn't something you chased, but something you became? Spinoza believed in a kind of happiness so profound, so unshakable, that it could only come from one place: understanding the universe and your place in it. He called this the intellectual love of God. But let's pause for a moment. What does that even mean? Is it faith? Is it worship? No. Spinoza's idea of God wasn't a distant deity watching from above. It was everything: nature, the cosmos, existence itself. And the love he spoke of wasn't emotional. It was knowledge. Knowledge of how all things connect, of the intricate dance between cause and effect that makes the universe what it is. Now let me ask you, have you ever felt that rare moment of awe? Maybe while staring at a starry sky, or listening to music that seemed to touch your soul. Spinoza would say that's just a glimpse of what's possible when you truly understand the world. But here's the twist. This kind of joy doesn't come from possessions, relationships, or even success. It comes from seeing reality as it truly is, without illusions, without fear. And yet, doesn't that sound impossible? How can we ever hope to understand something as vast, as infinite, as the universe? Spinoza believed the answer lies within us. By using reason, by seeking knowledge, by aligning our minds with the natural order of things, we can experience a joy that's not fleeting but eternal. But here's the challenge. To love the universe as it is means accepting everything: the good, the bad, the painful, the beautiful. Can you do that? Can you embrace life, not as you wish it to be, but as it truly is? Think about it. If joy isn't something you find, but something you create through understanding, then what's stopping you? Is it fear? Is it doubt? Or is it the belief that happiness has to come from outside yourself? Spinoza's vision of joy isn't for the faint-hearted. It's not about comfort, it's about transformation. It's about looking at the world with clear eyes and saying, this is enough, because this is everything. Ready to dive deeper? There's more to uncover. Let's keep going. Lesson 8. Detachment from external influences. How much of your happiness depends on things outside of you? A compliment, a paycheck, a sunny day. Do these external factors control your mood? Spinoza would ask, why do we give so much power to things we can't control? Let's be honest. How often do we blame the world for our frustrations? If only they hadn't said that, or if only this hadn't happened. But Spinoza saw things differently. He believed that true peace comes when we detach from the chaos of external influences and focus on what we can control, our own minds. Think about it. What happens when you let your happiness depend on things beyond your control? Someone doesn't text back, and your mood crashes. Traffic delays your plans, and your whole day feels ruined. Spinoza would call this a kind of slavery, not to people, but to circumstances. So let me ask, who's really in charge of your emotions? But here's the paradox. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It's not about ignoring the world or pretending you don't care. It's about understanding that the world is unpredictable, and no amount of worry or frustration will ever change that. Can you accept that? Can you surrender control over the uncontrollable? Here's a challenge for you. The next time something goes wrong, a missed opportunity, a harsh word, a sudden change, stop and ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Because Spinoza believed that peace isn't about fixing the world. It's about mastering how you respond to it. And yet, doesn't that sound easier said than done? How do we stay calm when life feels like storm? How do we find peace when everything seems to pull us away from it? Spinoza's answer is simple but not easy. Shift your focus inward. Detach from what you can't control and invest in understanding what you can. Imagine what life would be like if you stopped being a puppet of external events. What if your inner peace was so solid, so unshakable, that nothing, no insult, no setback, no disappointment could take it from you? Think about it. That kind of freedom might just be the most powerful thing of all. Let's explore further. Lesson 9. living in accordance with nature. What if the secret to happiness wasn't about conquering the world, but aligning with it? Spinoza believed that the key to a fulfilling life is living in harmony with nature, not fighting its currents, but flowing with them. But here's the question: how often do we actually do that? Think about your daily struggles. How much energy do you spend resisting what is? Complaining about the weather, dreading Mondays, wishing people would just behave the way you want them to. But Spinoza would ask, why resist? Nature doesn't resist. The river flows. The tree bends with the wind. So why do we fight against life's inevitable currents? Now, let's make it personal. When was the last time you truly accepted something you couldn't change? Not just tolerated it, but embraced it? Spinoza believed that understanding the natural order of things brings peace, because everything, even the things we dislike, happens according to a reason. Imagine looking at life that way, not as a series of obstacles, but as a perfectly balanced system you're already a part of. But here's where it gets tricky. To live in accordance with nature means letting go of unrealistic expectations. Are you ready to accept people as they are, not as you wish they'd be? Are you ready to embrace life's challenges as opportunities, rather than burdens? And what about yourself? Are you living in alignment with your true nature? Or are you chasing goals and dreams that aren't really yours? Things society told you to want? Spinoza would argue that many of us are out of sync with who we really are, which is why we feel restless, anxious, even lost. So here's the question. What would happen if you stopped resisting? If you let life unfold as it's meant to, and worked with it instead of against it? Could you find freedom, not in control, but in connection? Think about it. Nature doesn't fight itself. The seasons don't argue. The tides don't rebel. What if we could live the same way, with clarity, acceptance, and purpose? Spinoza believed it's possible. The only question is, are you ready to try? Let's keep going. There's more to discover. Lesson 10. Peace through necessity. What if you could look at everything in your life, the joy, the pain, the triumphs, the failures, and say, it couldn't have been any other way? Spinoza believed that understanding necessity, the idea that everything happens because it must, was the ultimate path to peace. But here's the question. Can we truly accept that? Think about the last time something didn't go your way. A missed opportunity, a broken relationship, a dream that slipped through your fingers. Did you blame yourself? Blame others? Or maybe even blame the universe? Spinoza would say this: blame is wasted energy. Why? Because everything that happens out of necessity. It couldn't have unfolded differently, not in the grand, interconnected web of cause and effect. But doesn't that sound unfair? If everything happens out of necessity, does that mean we have no control? Does it mean our choices don't matter? Spinoza's answer is both comforting and challenging. He argued that while we can't change the past or control the future, we can control how we understand it. And in that understanding, we find peace. Here's the paradox. The more we resist what happens, the more we suffer. But what if you could let go of that resistance? What if you could look at life's worst moments and say this, too, has its place? It's not about being passive. It's about seeing the deeper order in what feels like chaos. Let me ask you, how much of your mental energy is spent wishing things were different? What would happen if, instead, you focused on what is? Spinoza believed that accepting necessity doesn't make us weaker. It makes us stronger. Because when we stop fighting reality, we free ourselves to act within it with clarity and purpose. But here's the challenge. Are you ready to surrender the need to control the uncontrollable? To embrace the idea that life unfolds exactly as it must, not as punishment, but as part of a greater design? Think about it. What kind of freedom would that bring? What kind of peace? Stay with me, because once you see the world through Spinoza's eyes, nothing will ever feel random or meaningless again. Let's dive deeper. So now that you've seen how Spinoza's ideas can transform the way you think about freedom, emotions, and life itself, the real question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you go back to fighting the same battles, resisting the same uncontrollable forces, and living as if your happiness depends on everything outside of you? Or will you take the first step toward true freedom by understanding yourself, the world, and your place within it? Ask yourself, what if you stopped blaming circumstances and started questioning your own reactions? What if you let go of the need to control everything and instead embrace the flow of life? Are you ready to surrender, not in defeat, but in power? Let's make this journey together. Share your thoughts in the comments. What's the one thing you're ready to let go of today? What's holding you back from living in harmony with yourself and the universe? I want to hear your stories. If this video sparked something in you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We're diving deep into philosophy, wisdom, and practical lessons that will challenge and empower you to live differently. Don't miss what's coming next. And if you're ready to explore Spinoza's ideas even further, there's no better place to start than with his book Ethics, a guide to understanding the nature of life, emotions, and freedom itself. It's available on Amazon for an incredibly low price. Check the first pinned comment for the link to grab your copy. Invest in your mind. It might just be the most important decision you make today. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.